Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am Britt with Rock and Flux, and we are doing a Canadian collaboration episode today. So it's the Canadian Invasion, and I am joined by several people. So I'm going to let you all go in the order of you being on my screen. So not to call you out, but Sean, can you start it off and introduce yourself and your band and what you do in your band?
Sure. I'm Sean Patrick Nolan. I play synthesizers and sequence in the post-punk band TRAITRS.
I'm Jason Corbett from the band Actors. I sing and play guitar.
Okay, I'm Denim. I play with Dean in Odonis Odonis. We write together and play a bunch of different stuff all the time.
And I'm Dean from Odonis Odonis, and I play a bit of everything. Yeah.
Well, thank you all of you for being on the show today. I'm really excited to talk with all of you, and it's exciting for me also because you all know each other and you've worked together before. So, can you kind of tell me what you all like about each other and your music? And let's start this off on a nice note, since you're Canadians and Canadians are supposed to be nice.
Well, I'll start. I think to kind of paraphrase what I was mentioning before, it's like you kind of can recognize the real ones, like certain bands and musicians who are out playing the shows and being supportive and like doing their art in a way that's, respectful. And that's kind of what I like about both Odonis Odonis and TRAITRS. Not just that they're Canadian, but like, I've seen them in Europe, seen them in, all over Canada. It's exciting to see other artists that are kind of going through the same things that you do, and you kind of develop this kind of odd symbiotic relationship. I feel like
camaraderie,
camaraderie. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when everybody kind of understands the lifestyle decisions and things that kind of come up with musicians, I think you kind of, even if you only meet a handful of times, I think there's like a shorthand almost, like we all sort of get each other, I think, which is kind of cool.
There's also only like a few Canadian bands in this like getting like put into this dark wave world. So we're all our own like cute little island of Canadian people wearing black clothes. I kind of felt like that when we met that was it Reese from Frontline Assembly. It was kind of the same thing. We were in Berlin and he starts talking and he just sounds like Canadian. And I'm like, I don't usually like bond over like nationalism, but I'm like, oh look, we're all just like little guys making beats in little Canada.
Yeah, it didn't really feel any different. It felt like he had gone through the kind of the same things that we've probably all gone through, And
yeah, definitely.
He didn't get a big head about it. He was like still like pretty grounded person, and I feel like about all of us, I think we're all kind of in that headspace. But also like I just like truly feel like both the bands here like are top notch like songwriters. Like the songs are awesome. Like, and I think that's why it sticks out. It's not because we're Canadian or anything. I just really think the music is really good.
It's true
on a global scale.
No, and actually, the only reason the Canadian thing came up is because I was talking with Jason a while ago, and I was like, I want to do a collab episode with you. Like, what bands do you think you would maybe want to, work with? And some things were thrown around, and Jason, you and I were kind of like, well, let's just do a Canadian band episode, and it kind of worked out that way. And I don't know, I think there is a cool component to the fact that you're all from the same country. Not that it ultimately matters, but it's kind of cool. So,
do you guys like, to the other bands, like, do you guys feel like, do you think being from Canada kind of holds us back somehow? Like, not like financially or like passport wise or anything, but do you think that bands, like when you go to LA or something or New York, like, do you feel like we're considered outsiders?
Sort of.
I
think sort of.
I always feel like in my head, I'm like, if we were doing the exact same stuff, like at the same time, but we were from Chicago or New York or something, it would have been different. I don't know. LA's been pretty like really nice with us right from the get go, but I still find, but I think it's almost different with LA because you're not from there, so they're like, oh, that's cool.
You know, most people aren't from LA. You know what I mean? So like that's
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
also
different
true.
too.
That's
You
true.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a hard time taking Canadians too seriously because we have like goofy accents and like, you know, we are the like international perspective is that we're like nice people and we are goofy little people, but then we like, you know, so I think it's harder to have like that sheen of cool.
Are you sure it's not because of what's that game that started in Canada with the puck on the ice and you throw it and then you have to like brush in front of it? What is that called?
Oh, curling.
Curling. Oh,
Curling.
curling.
You sure it's not because of curling? That you all do it?
It could be because of curling. Like that's the kind of stuff that's made us all like seem a bit silly.
That and hockey.
Yeah.
It's all because of curling.
I'm making a joke. I'm making a bad joke. But you know, it's I don't know. I don't think the perception of you all. I think that's interesting that you all think that. I feel like
Maybe
I
we're
don't
just
know.
insecure. I don't know.
It could be. I think I think it depends on who you talk to here. But I think overall people like when you're not from America, even if it's and like Canada, you all are like our neighbor, so it's a little different, but I still think people like people who are not from the US.
In Europe, I notice people are significantly nicer when they find out you're Canadian and not American. It's like, oh, okay, now I'll be. I picked that up. I've noticed. I know for us when we were, because we really first dipped our toes into touring by touring in Europe, and I do think the Canadian thing did help us a little bit because we were like a kind of a novelty a little bit when we were first kind of cutting our teeth over there. It was, you know, not every day that Canadian bands kind of come through certain parts of, say, Poland or Germany or Hungary or whatever. So I think in some ways that did kind of help us out a little bit. And yeah, I feel the same way about the States. I always, you know, you feel like, oh, if we were, you know, I think there's something about the scene there that is, yeah, I don't know. Like it's easier to get a momentum built, I think. For Toronto, it's pretty tough, I think. If you're just starting out from scratch or something, it'd be hard to get just people to come out to shows, period, just at all. So
But you all have all toured Europe, right? And I mean, it's not like you all have any lack of touring and playing shows. And in that, I think you all have shows and live stuff coming up soon, right? So
Yeah, I know we do. Like, and we'll be back in the US at the end of November. You know, I think with actors, first we kind of got traction in Europe. And I wonder, it sounds crazy, but I wonder if it was because like I'd be on the internet at like 3 in the morning after coming home from a shift at the restaurant or the bar I was at, 3 or 4 in the morning, and that's when I would like get on like Facebook and like kind of reach out to people and stuff. So I think I was kind of connecting with these people from Europe because they were awake. I don't know. But everyone was like, "Oh, focus on Europe." But then now Europe's great, but now our shows in the United States, which is like a second album in, now the shows in the States are getting bigger than the ones in Europe, which it's nice, but in the States, I still feel like we have so much to prove. Like it's like, oh yeah, oh you're from Vancouver, like that's above New York, you know? It's like, really, you don't know where like Vancouver is, you know? There's a bit of that.
It's actually kind of crazy, like that we're all talking. I just realized we all started in Europe. Really, we all had our start in Europe.
Yep.
And you all feel like it was easier to break in there too. All of you started in Europe. But the interesting thing is I feel like historically there is always that story that like there even, you know, people from the US broke in Europe before they broke here. And what you were saying before, like you feel like they're more accepting, but do you feel like they stay as loyal as maybe US fans do once they liked your music in Europe? Do you think maybe that's the difference or no?
Hard to say. Like,
yeah,
I know for us, like one exception that I found was we went over and played the UK. So like several dates in England, a couple dates in Scotland, And I came home thinking like I'm never going back over there again. It's like it was raining. I hated driving on the opposite side of the road. It seemed like the shows weren't super well attended. Like that was in 2018, I think we were there. But you know what was crazy is the fans that we made over there have been some of our biggest supporters even up until now.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, for a tour and playing in front of like, we were playing in front of like 50 people a night, maybe. And it's like, I keep in touch with all of them. Whereas in the States, I feel like maybe there's a little more competition for your attention there. It's a little more transient, but
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. We had the exact same experience. So we now we still do Europe pretty extensively, and there's people that have seen us like 8 times, 9 times, 10 times. People have been there the very first tour when there was like 20, 30 people there and stuff. So it's pretty neat to see that. And you can see like the old shirts and stuff, like designs that I forgot that we even had made or something. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot that. A lot of the first merch we brought was like handmade stuff too, like just sliding sheets of paper into little keychains. Yeah, so it's pretty neat. Like
Well, Sean, it feels like you all are never home. Like you guys tour a lot.
this year was pretty it was pretty brutal for that. And great too. Like it always kind of it's both things. But yeah, for us, like going to Europe the first time was like out of sheer desperation. Like we couldn't do much at home, and it just seemed like there was especially in Germany just a lot more like smaller festivals. That's basically how it started for us. Was we got accepted into one small festival in Hilden, Germany, and then we just built around that. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. They seem like a little more maybe open to new stuff at first. Maybe, I'm not sure. It's hard to say. The crowds are a bit different from Europe and North America for sure.
Where do you all have like a top 3 places that you like to play, or that like just top 3 places that you've had great shows in that you can think of?
None. They're all duds.
well, you know, honestly, first of all, like for me, speaking from my experience, I'm a control freak, so I always like to drive the van. So by the time I roll in somewhere and we do a sound check, I'm usually like sound check and I like get a little bit of sleep, and then after we hang out with the fans, and I go home back to the hotel and sleep. So I don't like visit anywhere in the city. So a lot of the times I'm like, I'll forget even certain cities that we played in, but every night usually like when all of us are sober in the band, so we're very aware in the moment. So
You're not sober. I've seen you pound Red Bulls like no one else.
they're sugar free, okay?
They are sugar free. I can attest to this.
It's the most. It's honest. I was scared with the amount of Red Bull this band drinks.
Yeah. So maybe I'm not completely not high. I'm a
Everyone
little
has
bit
a
high.
vice, okay?
Yeah.
We all have a vice.
But the long story short is that really it's like being more like, I'm just comparing it to when I used to be like really drunk on stage all the time. Because you think I'm pounding Red Bull, you should have seen like the Jägermeister I used to drink.
Oh
And then
gosh.
I'd be on stage
no.
and I'd be like blacked out. Like I'd be like, and that was like the norm for years and years. So for me, every show is, it sounds so cliche, but like every show is like pretty special for me. You know, like there's so many cities that are great that we'd be here all night.
The ones you least expect too. Like there's ones that are fun for different reasons. Like we played like Tacoma, Washington. Like the ones that are just like, where am I going? Like these places are pretty fun too. Like it's not always the big markets. It's like, yeah. Bellingham is pretty fun.
You can't have like a preconceived notion of what the show's going to be, because you do get surprised, and sometimes you can have a complete blast, like something, this is going to be shit, man, it's going to suck, and then it just is awesome, super fun night. And it, yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be like a big city to do that.
I learned a lesson years ago. A friend of mine was at one of my shows with my previous band, and it was very poorly attended. And I said to him, I was like, man, no one's here. This sucks. Like, and I'm thinking like I'm gonna have a bad show. And he kind of looked at me, he was really offended. He's like, I'm here. And it just kind of dawned on me. It's like, yeah, you're not playing to the people who aren't there. You can't be disappointed in that. And then having a positive attitude about it, like you guys are saying, it's like you get surprised, like you end up having these kind of weird, really awesome shows when you least expect it.
Yep. Yep. And I think if you go in with a shitty attitude, it just increases your likelihood of having a shitty experience too. Because yeah, if you're just open to it, it's like it's great. Like I've had like it's really rare the number of like that might be an interesting topic too. It's just like bad experiences at gigs, but it's honestly like pretty minimal. Like for the most part, like everyone's pretty respectful at shows and nice to talk to and receptive and stuff. Like we haven't really been met with like in previous projects, I've been met with crowds that are like completely indifferent or, but it's yeah, I don't know, it's always pretty decent, I find.
Nice. So you all are all songwriters. What is the best, if you've gotten any, or so it's a kind of a dual-edged question. So what is the best songwriting advice you've gotten, and what is the best songwriting advice you could give to maybe other bands who are starting out?
I think for don't be too. I think the biggest thing I've found with it's also just working with people too. With songwriting, like if you're collaborating, like if you're writing in a group situation, I think it's just like not being too precious about your parts, like trying to hear the whole thing and not being like you really just like what you're playing. You're not actually like that. And even if you like what you're playing, that might work for something like just store it. Just like, we archive, like we have, it's a mess. Like my desktop is covered in fragments and things that I don't know, but it's just, I think a lot of people get held back. Like they put a lot of pressure on whatever they're putting out to be really good, and you want it to be good, but you have to, I think that prevents people from actually putting stuff out eventually. I think it's just good to just kind of like get through that and just kind of just write like you're doing a regular kind of 9-to-5 job sort of, and be more fruit or
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was. That was exactly what I was thinking. Like, I find like a lot of people get too precious about one idea, and they're like, "This is the one," and it's like, no, just write a ton of songs and go back through it later, and you'll know what's good. Like, especially with a bigger pile of music, like you'll be able to pick it out, even if you go back to it like 3 to 6 months later, and you're like, this one is still good, and it's super simple that way. And also, like it, I mean, we're like coming from maybe slightly different arrangements than a typical band. But I remember back in the day, like if everybody has an ego, it's like, oh man, my guitar solo's got to be like the most important thing in this, and turn up the guitar solo,
Yeah. But like, I mean, it's like what feels good and like is an enjoyable like experience is what should be leaned into, not what you think should happen or like what sort of important things you have conceptualized should happen. It's like I find the best stuff we've put in together has always been like, oh, we leaned into what felt right, even though our brains might have been like, oh, we probably shouldn't do this for this stupid reason, or we shouldn't do this for this stupid reason. And it's like, no, like just it feels good. It sounds really good. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And well, and that mentality of like trying something different too. So you're not always doing the same thing, I would imagine,
And I think just being open to an idea changing. Like if you have, it's going to, whether it's like track order or like it's going to change and go through multiple versions and variations. And it's just easier to let that go than to, unless it's like, right before you're sending it in, like say for either recording or masters or stuff like, and even up until then, I still feel like you have time there's always time to tinker with stuff, and things change all the time. But again, it's just like being, open to allowing that change to happen and not, just kind of tensing up, and it can be scary too, because sometimes you have to like let go of like decent or like okay stuff to try to get something a little bit better, or if it's not really scratching the itch that you're trying to pull off with your song or something, then you got to go back to the drawing board, and that can be a bit daunting sometimes. But the more you do it, you get kind of used to it too.
I think the word that popped into my head right away, and it was echoed in both you guys, is precious. That's it. Even like I'm literally like the past 4 or 5 days, fleshing out. I'm basically writing songs from scratch for the new Actors record right now, and I think about, and I had to learn this because our first record on Artifact did quite well. The label, he jokingly said to me, he's like, "Good luck following that record up," and I was like, "Oh man,
No pressure.
what is that?" And like, so my knee-jerk reaction was bravado, and I just said, "Well, I'm just getting started. Like, I could write those songs forever." Like, and then I thought, well, I was kind of lying to him. I was a little worried, actually. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to think about what the next record is. I'm thinking about like, well, I'm not going to write my best 8 songs. They've got to be 8. I'm going to write 30 songs. Like, I'm writing a record right now, but I'm thinking about the record after this record. My goal has always been like, let's see where Actors is at in 2025. That's kind of always been my end goal. It's like, oh yeah, let's just keep writing. And here's another thing. If you're planning on like, this is the song everyone loves, like, you don't know what your best song is. And sometimes you think you do and you get lucky and you're like, oh, okay, that was obviously a banger. But like, you don't know until you release a song. Like, I've been wrong on both our records, what I thought was going to be the most popular song.
Everybody says that too. That because you all get so close to it, I think that you look at it differently also, and then the fans surprise you with which ones they actually end up liking the most.
Yeah, and live too. Performing the songs live sometimes. Like, we have tracks that,
Dude, that's huge.
yeah, like they become like live staples. But on the album, you're kind of like, nobody talks about this track. Like, we have one still.
Also for writing, before you put it down to tape or whatever, it's like I think playing songs after you write them also adds to the songwriting and really finesses the whole thing. So I always found it's like kind of always better to at least do a little bit of like performance live before you go in the studio. But
what about writer's block? Like, if you get stuck, what do? Do you just scrap it, or do you go back to it later?
Move on.
Yeah, move on.
Put it away for a second.
Yeah, realizing that there is a point of diminishing returns. Like, if you're working on, if it hasn't been good, if you've been struggling for like 5 hours on something, just take a walk. Like, go get a coffee or
or just start another idea. Yeah, don't even.
I'm on. I guess today's day 5. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a song every day, and not finish out the lyrics, but like have a chord progression, a beat, a tempo, maybe a title. And I was like, the first 3-4 days, I was like, man, I'm killing it. Like, I'm showing the band, I'm like, what do you think of this? They're like, yeah. And then today I'm just like, I feel like I'm writing the same Foo Fighters song over and over. I'm like, what am I doing? But I recognize that and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go walk the dog and like,
yeah.
Do you all have, and this is a good question, I think, do you all have a favorite song that you've written so far? Have you written a favorite song of your own so far? Or do you feel like you're always striving for that?
Yeah, I don't think I'm always chasing the dragon. I think
But for you, not for other people, but like for yourself. Like, you look at a song and you're like, that I did a good job on that. Like, this is a great song.
I like that, but then it's always like, okay, like after like a month of it being out, you're like, oh, I hate it. And then you go back to it and then you go back to it a year later and you're like, oh, it was pretty good actually. But then you're on to something else.
That makes sense.
Right. It's like, I find it so hard to like listen to old stuff after because you're listening to these songs so much when you're working on it that by the time it's done, I'm like, I don't need to hear this again. Plus, you got to play it live, and it's like, oh my god, and you start losing perspective. It doesn't even sound like a song anymore. Like,
well, this came up actually in one of the last episodes that I was recording, because they're all songwriters too, obviously, and they were saying some of the same things. But the one thing I think is probably, I guess, once you've recorded it and put it out, at least in the live setting, you can change it up if you want to, and you get the reaction to it a little bit more than when you're just like in the process of recording it. But to that point, like, do you get tired of playing the songs over again? And if you do, how do you deal with that? Do you kind of change up how you play them live, or maybe change your setup, or how do you all deal with that?
I don't get tired of them if they're working. Like if a song works live, I'm happy.
I don't know. I sometimes I like I'll lately if it's older stuff, I'll kind of tweak what I'm playing. I like just so it's a little bit different, but yeah, for the most part, I don't know. I find it's rare that there's tracks that I don't look forward to performing. There's some that I sometimes would rather like you might get tired of playing it, like some songs you sort of need to be in there, and there's other ones that you'd like to swap out to play and sometimes just for either time restrictions or something you can't do it. But for the most part, like I don't think so. Like we're pretty good with just like adding onto it or making it a slightly different experience than the record. I think it's always important.
I know for me, like, there's some songs from actors like PTL. I've been playing that song for over 10 years. And I look at the shows of like, I don't get tired of the songs. I try and kind of like get in it. It sounds silly. Like it's like you get into like kind of like a meditative state with it, almost like how like a really good show is you're playing and you see your band member from the corner of your eye or something, and like everything feels almost slow motion, and it's that flow state.
Do you wink at them? It's like a slow wink.
That's good.
Well, with these guys, there's just two of them in each of their bands, so they're just kind of more duos. So they can't really look into each other's
They
eyes.
could wink at each other. They could though. They really could look into each other's eyes.
Yeah.
I think we've had definitely moments at like big shows where we give each other like a little look where you're like, oh, this is kind of sick, like
For
that's
sure.
great.
Yeah, but that's a cool moment, isn't it? Like, isn't that a great feeling to be like, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, there's so many times, especially when I was in my early 20s, that I took some like experiences for granted that I know like are the things I wanted. And now, especially when anything happens, I'm always like, oh, okay, like there's always that moment where you're like, oh, this is fucking kind of cool,
If you could bottle that feeling, it's something to feel.
That's really scary to me. It's like you see these older bands, you're like, oh, why don't they stop playing? Like, Buddy can't sing anymore, and they're old, and this, and I think they don't have a choice. Like,
who are you talking about?
Motley Crue, but not me. But it's addictive. Like we could play like 30 shows, on a run, and then like come home and like within 2 weeks, I feel like I've never played before, and I'm like, oh man, I really want to go on tour. Being on tour is really hard, but not being on tour, like not getting that vibe from the crowd, it's really something else. Like, and I think that's why I think when younger bands have this really fast rocket to the top, it's like drugs are common. Like, how do you keep that high going? It's like, because like they say, like what, 23 hours out of the day, like you're not on stage. What do you fill your time with? And then when you come home, it's like, you come home and you're like feeling like, oh, I'm home. This is great. I'm not going to get depressed. I've been home for 7 days now. Oh, I guess I'm not going to get that post-tour depression. Oh, there it is. And then you're like, for a month, you're like, what is going on?
Is it because of the adrenaline that you have to build up when you're touring, you think? Because, I mean, it's kind of sheer adrenaline in some ways, no?
No, it's true. It's the adrenaline, but it's not an ego thing. It's not adoration from it. It's just something happens with the frequencies of the music, and there's people who are at the show to see that music. There's a connection. It's like when you were younger and you first heard a certain band, and like music's very magical. It's
kind of a spiritual thing. That's why I do put on concerts.
It really is.
Well, that was actually one of my questions is what was the last live show other than your own that you've been to?
Oh, I hate live shows.
Really?
No.
I was going to say, like, that's counterintuitive.
The last one that I actually had a great time at was the Hives. I saw them at Lee's Palace, which is like a 600 cap room here. It was actually like, say what you want about their music, but like it was incredible. Like they do their thing, like I think the best you can possibly do it, and it's not even a band. Like I listened to them a lot when I was like 12, but it was nuts. Them and Billy Woods this last year, I like both amazing shows.
I know actors flew down to Mexico City to play with VNV Nation. And I know, Sean, you guys have played with VNV Nation a lot. I kind of consider, I'm like, oh, I think Actors fans are like really invested and really dig us. And then, so we played Mexico City. I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that crowd really was digging us. And then VNV Nation came out, and I was like, they think he's like Elvis Presley down there. It was insane.
Dude, it's no joke, man.
It's no joke. They were eating out of his hand. Not yet, not yet. Now it's like, it's like, it was mental.
Oh my god.
And it was hard not to get swept up in that.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. It's half the fun of you know, we played with them too, and it's it's fun. It's always fun to watch, and especially if it's a good crowd. I like picking his brain, Ronan's brain, after the shows about what he thinks about the crowd, or if it was a good crowd or kind of stuffy or something. Because he really works it too. Like he puts a lot of work into trying to rile them up, and it's insane. Some of the crazy shows, like we played with them in Hamburg, and that's where they're based now. And so it meant they kept warning us like this is going to be a big show. It was the last show of the European run, and I couldn't believe it. And we'd already been playing with them for the month previous, and it was like, holy crap, like it's awesome. And yeah, the level of dedication that the that VNV Nation fans have is like I've never seen anything quite like this before. Like you see it at the merch, like everything. Like they take the lyrics very personally, and they get really moved by them and attached to them. So it's been pretty, it's cool. A big learning curve for us playing with them and just observing all that. Yeah. But I think for this, I saw Proto Martyr live. They're a Detroit post-punk group, and they're one of my favorites. I really, I don't know. Yeah. I like them a lot, and it was really nice. So I was listening to their new record, Formal Growth in the Desert. It was a touring record I was listening to while we were flying, and then I was able to see them at the Horseshoe Tavern in the summer, I think, and it was amazing. It was incredible. It was a sweaty cramp. It was exactly how I'd want to see Proto Martyr. There was like, it was a very punk show. It was very cool. Yeah.
That Model Actress show was crazy. I know Denim turned me onto them, and it was mind blowing. Yeah, it was really, those guys are excellent.
Okay, so here's a random question, and it might be difficult to answer, but if you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would be the 3 albums you would choose? Or if it's easier, the 3 bands you would choose. So you don't have to get album specific.
Actors, TRAITRS, and Odonis Odonis.
Well done. Well done.
You don't need anything else. It's all there. All your nutrients, all in.
How do you even answer that question for real?
That's too hard,
I've had the same top 3 band. I could answer the band, not the album. But I've had the same top 3 bands since I was in high school, which I don't know what that says about me. But
does it have to be music? Could it just be like, that brown noise or whatever?
I mean, if that's what you want to listen to for the rest of your life.
You just want to listen to brown noise?
That would be one of mine, for sure. Yeah. It's like airplane noise or whatever, like airplane engine noise.
You're like,
that's all 3?
No one's going to visit your island either. They're going to be like, don't go to his island, man.
Don't go to that island.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not that brown noise. That's the brown.
I thought you meant like the south.
Oh, that's brown
noise.
No!
What?
No. There's like a frequency called brown noise that it's like white noise, but it's brown noise. It's
what
a
makes
different
it brown?
frequency range, and it's like airplane. I don't know. It doesn't make you shit. It's just like airplane engine sound. It's more relaxing than white noise. Way more relaxing. Check it out.
Well, if I'm going to an island,
Yeah,
I'm bringing
check it out.
9 Inch
Check out the
Nails,
brown noise.
The Cure, and Depeche Mode. And it's been that way since I was like 14 years old. So I'll say bands. It's easier
That's
than
a
albums.
correct answer.
I've heard of The Cure, but the other 2, I don't know.
They might, and that might be cliche, but I think they're all
Nope.
great, and I've listened to
I
them
don't think it's
forever.
cliche. I think all three of those bands have amazing discographies. That's a great list.
Yeah.
Cliche, like man, like David Bowie for sure. Probably Roxy Music because I couldn't live without Avalon. And then I don't know, something from my childhood, maybe like The Clash, London Calling is such, like, but that could change tomorrow, like there's just so much good music.
I thought you were gonna say Foo Fighters, to be honest. but-
Oh.
Fuck you, Jason.
In hostile.
Anybody else have an answer? I don't think Dean and Sean said 3.
No,
I gotta get a beer.
man, it's really tough. I don't know.
No.
If you can, it's okay.
I feel like I'd have to have a New Order album in there. I think.
I know, that's how I was gonna say that too.
You don't have to say
Like,
an album.
New
You can just
Order
say a
albums.
band because it's hard. It's kind of hard, especially if you like a band's music. Like I wouldn't be able to pick a Nine Inch Nails album. I don't think.
Yeah, because I'm a big I like Radiohead a lot too. So I feel like I really like Moonshaped Pool was an album I listened to a lot on tour, and I've developed kind of a weird personal relationship with that album. So maybe that one I would probably have too.
Oh man. Well, I'd have to say Ministry because that's like my favorite band growing up. And I like all eras of it. Maybe not so much the recent stuff or anything, but how much of a change it has. I really like all the older stuff. I just feel like it's all cliche stuff though. But I'd probably say The Cure too. You know what I mean? Like,
don't think you
because I love so many of
Yeah,
their
they're just so
songs.
good.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat. It's hard to beat.
And then New Order, you know what I mean? Like, it's just I grew up with all these songs that are like imprinted in my brain. So if I only had to pick 3, I'm like, okay.
But like kids now are starting to get into The Cure, which is also pretty cool that like their music has stayed relevant for that long, So I think there's something to be said for that.
Me and Jason were talking about you were kind of talking back and forth, and you were just saying like, how it's just really just people want to hear good songs, and I think The Cure just wrote a lot of like really good songs. Like, they're undeniably good. They're still good today. Like, they don't sound really dated to me.
Yeah.
What do you think is if you can think of one? I know I have one, but what do you think is maybe one of the most underrated bands?
The Sound.
Ooh, The Sound. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I was gonna say the Cult. The Cult.
Oh, they're huge though.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
They're
Okay.
yeah.
That was actually it's funny you say The Cult because that was like my first favorite band ever was The Cult.
I think it's a Canadian thing. I think we all love them.
I
here.
think so because
yeah.
they are not that popular here.
Like late
Yeah.
like late 80s or late 80s when Electric came out. And then after that they had that song like Firewoman or whatever, and they were in Canada, they were probably arguably one of the biggest bands of the late 80s.
Yeah.
For sure.
Not as big here. Or like another one, which I think they got pretty big, but like I feel like In Excess is underrated. And I say it all the time. But I feel like
I don't know. These are pretty big bands.
Are you
so-
kidding? What?
not here.
Like, I still they're on the radio every day.
You know what I find interesting is that you never hear the Smiths on the radio in Canada, but as soon as you roll into the States, I hear Morrissey or the Smiths on the radio like every day. It's crazy.
But I didn't grow up hearing the Cult on the radio at all. Like never.
No, that makes sense. Cult is
In
that's a
Excess I heard
Canadian
on the
thing.
radio, but a lot of people don't know who they are, which is weird to me. Like they probably would know the song if they heard it. Because they are on the radio. But they
And In Excess, even before their big huge album Kick, that's undeniably huge. But they have so many good songs before that.
Don't Change. Great song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well we're winding down. So is there anything that you all would like listeners to know or to expect from you all? Jason, you're working on new music. I think you're doing a repressing of your existing record, right? Soon. Am I right on that or no?
I think we have to repress both of our releases.
It's a good.
Nice flex, buddy.
Anything else that you want listeners to know?
Well, from actors?
Yeah.
Yeah, just go to actorstheband.com and get on all of our socials and keep abreast of our tour dates and shows coming up this year. There's not a lot for 2024, but late November we're going to be doing select dates in major cities in the US, and we're going to start releasing new singles probably within the next 2 months.
Nice.
You got new singles?
Well, he's been
Like a
working
new
every day.
record or just
The record will
singles?
be released by the end of the year, October and November, but we're going to start releasing like a single every month or two, starting probably February or March.
How many singles?
They want to know how many.
Oh, how many singles? 4 or 5 probably before the record comes out.
Oh wow.
That's what we did on the last record, and it was good for us.
I like lots of singles.
Yeah.
That's what we've done on the last 2 releases. We've kind of dropped most things in single form.
Well, guys, what do you have coming up?
We're just making new stuff. We gotta hunker down over the winter. We're gonna play maybe a couple shows, but it's a writing year, I think.
We just dropped the EP in the summer, and Actors is on that, so we just finished touring off that, so we're all new stuff for next year.
I want to say the last Western US tour, people were coming up to me after the show and really hoping to hear the song that we did together. And I said, I said, there's no way.
We actually had the same thing. We didn't play it. They're like, why are you playing this song? I'm like, well, I'm not singing on it, so.
Maybe one day we can do a special guest version where we all are at the same place at one time.
That would be really fun. Yeah. I'm really happy.
Yeah,
I'm really happy with how the song turned out. It's really cool.
Yeah, it worked out.
I'm like glad people like really liked it so much. Like it, I don't know. It seems like it's doing well. So
Sounds great. So I think, but people say I'm biased because I like this type of music, but I think I have good taste. So I'm going to stick with it.
I think you have good taste too.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Sean, what do you all have coming up? I know you have a tour coming up soon.
Yes, we're doing one show in Sao Paulo, Brazil on February 10th.
Oh wow.
That we just got. Yeah, that was kind of a crazy opportunity that we got. Yeah.
Somebody actually said come to Brazil, and then you were like, oh, okay, actually.
You know what? Why not? Let's do it. Dude, there's a woman's been writing every day. Anytime we post like, here's new tour dates, and just like, why are you coming to Brazil? You have to come to Brazil. Where are you? And we're like, lady, we're coming now. Here we are.
Brazil's a big country, though, you know? So, I mean, maybe she would travel for it within there.
Yeah, hopefully this will open up the door for us to go more often. That was kind of the thing. So we're working on it. We're dealing with figure out when it's coming out. But we've been writing. Like we've been writing a lot. Sean and I always write on the road. Like it's not often you get a lot of time together like that. So we, bring laptops, bring MIDI, and just kind of work on stuff while we go. Yeah. But yeah, so
One of Tricks Point Never does that too. In the green room, like after sound check, like while the show's kind of setting up, he's like in the green room. Like last time we played a show with him, he was doing that.
Who
and I was
does
like,
that?
That's cool. But it's One of Tricks Point Never. But I feel like it'd be so hard to write in that headspace, like while all that shit's going on, you're also writing music. It seems so wild to me.
Yeah, it's tough. Sometimes it's like it's nice to like if we're sound checking, sometimes I'll just kind of like work on stuff that we're like have ideas. It started because I was with flying. I started working on stuff just to kill for an 8-hour flight or something.
That
and
makes
then,
sense.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of like I don't know. Like it's good to like sort of generate ideas, but I don't find like it takes like I think like you said, like you got to hunker down and really work on them and finesse them. But it's kind of good to get things kind of started, or loops. Like usually in my role, that's kind of what I'm doing, is like drums and textures, like atmosphere. So I might just come up with like maybe 4 or 8 bar loops and just.
Does anyone ever ask you what you're doing on the plane? Like next to you?
No, not yet. Not that I can. No, not really.
I always like wonder if people like watch, because like I watch movies usually or whatever when I have to fly, and I'm always wondering the last time it didn't work out too well.
I'm a big fan of just, you can always see what the new movie is. Like when the Liberace movie came out or something, it's kind of like, okay, that's taken up about 3 or 4 screens in the vicinity, and then there's always somebody who's watching like Rudy or something.
You have to be, you know what I found though? You have to be really careful about the movies that you choose, because I like to download them and then just have them for whenever I want to watch it. And like I pick just stupid things because I'm an anxious flyer. So I like picked The Neighborhood Watch, which is like that Ben Stiller. It's like an older movie, and I was like, oh, this will be like safe. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, this will be a safe choice. There is a scene, and I'm not going to say what it is in that movie. I had a father and a little kid sitting next to me, and there is a scene where it is not appropriate at all, and I'm on the aisle, and I was like, oh my God, and I put my hand up to like stop it from playing, because like you did not want people to see and think you were watching something on that. And I did not expect that movie was going to have a scene like that at all. So you got to be careful. The moral of that story is be very careful.
What was the scene?
Yeah.
It's an orgy scene, and it's all there. So
What?
Yeah.
There's an orgy scene in that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty hardcore on a plane.
They're aliens, and like there's this neighbor. There's this neighbor of Ben Stiller, and he thinks this dude is like the alien they're looking for because he's weird, like, and just awkward. And then they go in his basement, and you think they're gonna get killed, and then he opens the door, and there's a full-on orgy in there.
Wait, so what happened?
So Ben Stiller has a neighbor in this movie who he thinks is an alien.
Kidding.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you really
Can we stop talking about Ben Stiller?
Listen, I have to.
Yes,
It's funny.
no spoilers for Neighborhood Watch.
Neighborhood Watch. I'm like, nice.
If you take home one thing from this episode of Rock and Flux, watch the Ben Stiller movie Neighborhood Watch.
Well, I think it's actually I keep calling it that. I think it's actually called The Watch, but I call it Neighborhood Watch because that's
or Watchmen or something.
No, it's called The Watch. I think it's got who else?
Oh,
in it?
okay.
I didn't
Other
know Ben
people are
Stiller
in
was in The Watchmen. I didn't know that.
It's The Watch.
Wait, Watchmen's wait, that's the comic book.
Google
Yeah.
Neighborhood Watch. Who else is in that? Someone else funny is in that too. Vince
I don't
Vaughn.
want to watch
Vince
this.
Vaughn.
He's in
I don't
it.
wanna
Yeah,
watch
he's in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
He's
Vaughn's in
great.
that.
He's great.
yeah. He is. It's a funny movie, but you're just not anticipating that at all. So
Jim Carrey in that movie?
You lost Jason. You're not gonna see it now.
yeah, there's a few people. Yeah.
We should actually just watch that together, like right now. Like, can we add a screen?
We could do
like,
a
just that
commentary.
movie's playing? And we could, like,
Yeah, then I
dance it.
definitely would not be able to share that video. It was just like not what you want someone who has a 4-year-old like sitting next to you to have, and like also being on the aisle because like people probably watch what you're watching, so it's like, oh wow, okay, someone caught
They
that at the
do.
wrong
Yeah, we
moment.
watch them.
Yeah, I look around at what people are doing, so people are inherently
I always
nosy.
like to watch. I like to watch and see how many times people go to the bathroom. It's like, why did that guy go in the bathroom 6 times?
Right, weak bladder or something.
How many do you go?
As many as it takes.
I don't know. Are you guys brown nose it?
Brown
noising
noising
it?
Yeah.
I do the red eye brown nose twice.
Brown noting on the
Brown
red eye.
noise. Brown noise on the red eye.
Oh my gosh, first time I've ever heard that term. I'm gonna look it up now.
But the one that doesn't make you shit, just to specify.
Yeah, not that. You have to be very specific. One makes you relax very well, and one makes you shit your pants. You got to make sure it's the right one.
plane's not where you want to mix that up either. You want to.
Yeah, you don't want to fuck that up.
I saw there was a video they had to
Well, fuck that.
evacuate a whole plane because I think some guy either shit on the plane or
Oh, I
something.
saw
Anyways,
that.
this is
He diarrheaed.
Yeah.
He wouldn't stop shitting on the plane. He diarrheaed like
Yeah.
on the
Oh,
plane, and
explosive
they had
diarrhea.
to land the plane.
yeah.
What is it? This is a true story.
Explosive diarrhea. Yeah.
Yeah, he like hijacked the plane with his shit.
It was right before
They
we
had to
went on
turn
a
it
flight
around.
too, and I was worried that I was gonna shit myself after that.
Do you know that we got in trouble? Well, I don't want to say got in trouble, but the topic of shit came up in the last episode I tried to do that was a collab, and one of the people was like, there was too
Uh-oh.
much shit talk, and I just can't take it. So thank you for normalizing.
Okay, so this is your fault.
Oh, we were. Oh my
I-
god.
Yeah.
If you find that offensive,
this is-
I don't
this is
know.
just a
It's
thing.
just- No,
We didn't have too much. Yeah, there wasn't
I
too
think
much
it's
poop talk.
funny.
We can stop. That's fine.
it's funny, you know? We all have to be able to laugh. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Everybody poops.
Everybody does.
I wish they'd show more of that in TV shows.
Normalizing
The
poo.
pooping.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get really stressed out.
Yeah.
What is your obsession with people going to the washroom?
Well, because are you ever in the washroom? You're like, oh man, you're in a restaurant. You're like, man, I've been in here for like 45 minutes. People are gonna think I've died. Like, how do I leave the washroom and not look like I almost died in the washroom? Anyways, I'll see you guys in Toronto.
New actor singles coming up.
Actors.com.
Well, thank you guys. It's been very fun. It's been great to get to know all of you a little better and listen to Odonis Odonis, actors, and traders. Guys, thank you for being here, and thank you all to our listeners. They're
Thank
waving
you.
goodbye, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.